My son flipped my plate into the grass and said, "Animals eat outside. You should too." I packed everything that night and called my lawyer. He lost his inheritance in hours, but what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. The potato salad scattered across the lawn like confetti at a funeral. I stood there, my 72-year-old hand still holding the plastic fork, watching my carefully prepared meal soak into the dirt. The backyard barbecue continued around me as if nothing had happened. My daughter-in-law Sandra smiled that cold smile of hers, the one I'd learned to recognize over the past 3 years of marriage to my son David. "Mom, you're making a scene," David said, not even looking at me as he adjusted the grill temperature. "Sandra's parents are here. Can't you just eat inside like a normal person?" Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. Normal person. I'd raised this boy, changed his diapers, worked double shifts at the hospital to pay for his college, and now I wasn't normal enough to sit at my own patio table, the table I'd bought, on the deck I'd paid to build, behind the house that still had my name on the deed. "David, I made this food for everyone," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. "I just wanted to eat with the family." Sandra's mother, a woman I'd met exactly twice, looked at me with what I can only describe as pity mixed with disgust. "Oh, honey," she said in that syrupy southern drawl, "maybe it would be better if you had your own space. You know, somewhere more appropriate for someone your age." Someone my age. I was 72, not 92. I still drove myself to the grocery store, still managed my own finances, still worked part-time at the clinic because I enjoyed it. But somehow, in the past year, I'd become this fragile thing that needed to be managed, contained, hidden away when company came over. "The nursing home down on Maple Street is really nice," Sandra added, refilling her wine glass. "They have activities, people your own age to talk to. You might be happier there." My chest tightened. This wasn't the first time they'd brought up the nursing home. It started as jokes, little comments about how I was getting forgetful, how I needed more help around the house. But I wasn't forgetful. I remembered everything, including every dollar I'd spent making their lives comfortable. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, bending down to pick up my plate. The ceramic had cracked right down the middle, just like something else I couldn't quite name yet. "Mom, be reasonable," David said, finally turning to face me. "You're getting older. Things happen. What if you fall? What if you forget to turn off the stove? We're just looking out for you." Looking out for me. Right. I thought about the mortgage payments I'd been making on this house for the past 5 years, ever since David lost his job and couldn't keep up. I thought about the car payments I'd taken over, the credit card bills I'd quietly handled when Sandra's shopping got out of control. I thought about the business loan I'd co-signed just last month when David decided he wanted to start his own consulting firm. I said I'm not going anywhere. I straightened up, plate pieces in my hand. "This is my house," Sandra laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, Eleanor, technically, yes, the deed might still be in your name, but let's be realistic about who really lives here, who takes care of things. You're more like a guest at this point, a guest, in the house I'd bought with my late husband's life insurance money, in the home where I'd raised David and his sister Rachel, where I'd nursed my husband through his final illness, where I'd grieved alone after his funeral because David was too busy with his new girlfriend to comfort his mother." "Where's Rachel?" I asked suddenly. My daughter should have been here for the barbecue, but I realized I hadn't seen her all afternoon. "Rachel couldn't make it," David said quickly. "She had plans." Sandra's smirk told me everything I needed to know. They hadn't invited Rachel. This whole barbecue, the careful timing when Rachel would be out of town for work, Sandra's parents visiting, it was all planned. They were making a statement about who belonged in this family and who didn't. And apparently, I didn't. I walked toward the house, broken plate in my hands, feeling every eye on me. Behind me, I heard Sandra's mother whisper something about difficult elderly parents and everyone's laughter that followed. My own son's laughter was the loudest of all. Inside the kitchen, I set the broken pieces on the counter and really looked around for the first time in months. When had Sandra rearranged everything? My grandmother's china was gone from the display cabinet, replaced with Sandra's modern white dishes. The family photos on the refrigerator had been replaced with pictures of Sandra's family, Sandra's friends, Sandra's life. It was like I'd been systematically erased from my own home. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the fireproof box I kept in the back of my closet. Inside were all the documents I'd accumulated over the years. Property deeds, investment accounts, insurance policies, bank statements. I spread them across my bed and started reading, Really reading, for the first time in years, the house deed, still in my name, with David listed as a potential inheritor. The investment accounts my husband had left me, substantial, more than David realized. The business loan I'd co-signed for David's consulting firm, I was listed as the primary borrower, which meant I could call it in at any time. The car title for the BMW David drove every day. My name was on it as the sole owner. I sat there on my bed, surrounded by papers that proved what I'd forgotten in my grief and loneliness after my husband died. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't some weak old woman who needed to be managed and hidden away. I was Eleanor Morrison, retired head nurse, widow of Robert Morrison, and I owned more than my son could possibly imagine. My phone was on the nightstand. I picked it up and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. James Crawford, the lawyer who'd handled my husband's estate, who'd helped me with various legal matters over the years. A man who'd known me when I was strong, when I made decisions instead of having them made for me. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice answered. "Eleanor, how are you?" "It's been too long." "James," I said, my voice stronger than it had been all day. "I need to see you first thing Monday morning. It's urgent." "Of course. Is everything all right?" I looked around my bedroom, my sanctuary that somehow felt foreign now, and made a decision that would change everything. "No, James. Everything is not all right, but it's about to be." After I hung up, I could hear them outside, still laughing, still celebrating whatever they thought they'd accomplished today, but they had no idea what was coming. They'd pushed the wrong woman too far, and tomorrow they were going to learn exactly who they'd been dealing with all along. I wasn't going anywhere, but they might be. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. I barely slept, my mind racing through 20 years of memories I'd somehow allowed myself to forget. How had I become so small in my own life? When had I stopped being Eleanor Morrison, the woman who rebuilt everything after tragedy, and become just mom, an inconvenience to be managed? I was dressed and ready by 7, sitting in James Crawford's waiting room 30 minutes before his office even opened. When his secretary arrived, she looked surprised to see me there. "Mrs. Morrison, your appointment isn't until 9. "I know, dear. I just needed to be here." James emerged from his office at 8:30, coffee in hand, and his face lit up when he saw me. "Eleanor, you look like you're ready for war." If only he knew. I might be, James. I really might be. In his office, I spread out all the documents I'd gathered from my bedroom. James put on his reading glasses and started examining everything, his expression growing more serious with each page. "Eleanor, do you realize what you have here?" "I'm starting to, but I need you to explain it to me like I'm seeing it for the first time, because in many ways, I am." He leaned back in his chair. "You're not just financially secure, Eleanor. You're wealthy. The investments Robert left you, combined with your pension and the property appreciation over the years, you're worth almost $2 million. $2 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. I had no idea it had grown that much. Your house alone is worth $400,000 now. The market in your neighborhood has exploded. And these investment accounts..." He tapped the papers. "You've been living off maybe 10% of your actual income. Where has the rest been going?" I closed my eyes, the truth hitting me in waves. David. His mortgage payments, his car, his credit cards, his business ventures, Sandra's shopping, their vacations, their lifestyle. I wanted to help. After Robert died, helping them made me feel useful. "Eleanor, you've given them almost $300,000 over the past 5 years. Did you know that? $300,000. I felt sick. I never added it up. It was always just emergencies, things they needed help with. Look at this business loan you co-signed last month. You're listed as the primary borrower for $75,000. Do you know what David's business actually does?" He said consulting. Something about helping companies with their strategies? James was quiet for a long moment. "Eleanor, I did some research after you called. David's consulting firm is just him and Sandra traveling to conferences and calling it work. They've spent most of that $75,000 on a trip to Europe and a new kitchen for the house." "Your house?" The room felt like it was spinning. "They remodeled my kitchen without asking me? The permits are all in your name since you own the house. But the decisions, the contractors, the design, all Sandra. She's been signing as your agent, claiming you gave her power of attorney." "I never gave her power of attorney." "I know." "That's forgery, Eleanor. That's fraud." I sat there, staring at the papers that proved just how thoroughly I'd been used. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was remembering how it started. After Robert's funeral, I was drowning in grief. David and Sandra had swooped in, so helpful, so caring. They insisted I shouldn't be alone in the big house. They moved in temporarily, just until I got back on my feet. That was 5 years ago. Slowly, without me realizing it, temporary became permanent. My grief became their opportunity. Every time I tried to reclaim some independence, Sandra would find a new reason why I needed help. A doctor's appointment I'd supposedly forgotten. A bill I'd allegedly paid twice. Little things that made me doubt myself, made me grateful for their presence. James, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Am I losing my mind? Are they right that I need to be in a nursing home? He leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Eleanor, you drove yourself here. You brought every relevant document in perfect order. You're asking intelligent questions and understanding complex financial information. You're sharper than people half your age. The only thing you've lost is your confidence, and I suspect that's been taken from you deliberately. What do you mean? It's called gaslighting. Eleanor, making someone doubt their own memory, their own judgment. It's a form of emotional abuse, and it's often used by family members who want to gain control over an elderly relative's finances. Emotional abuse. The words hit me like ice water. You think they've been abusing me? I think they've been manipulating you systematically for years. And I think Saturday's incident with the plate was them testing how far they could push you before you'd fight back. I thought about Sandra's parents being there, the careful timing when Rachel was out of town, the nursing home comments that felt more like threats than suggestions. It had been a performance, designed to humiliate me into submission. What can I do, James? What are my options? He pulled out a legal pad and started writing. First, we revoke any financial access they have. I'll freeze the business loan pending investigation. Second, we establish that you're mentally competent with a formal evaluation. I know a geriatric psychiatrist who can do that this week. Third, we send them a formal notice that they need to vacate your property. Can they fight it? They can try, but Eleanor, you hold all the cards. You own the house, you control the money, and you're mentally competent. The law is on your side. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not the kind that comes from hurting people, but the kind that comes from taking control of your own life. There's something else, James continued. Your daughter, Rachel. Have you spoken with her about any of this? David always says she's too busy, that I shouldn't bother her with family drama. Eleanor, I think you should call her. Today, before you do anything else. I pulled out my phone and stared at Rachel's number. When had I stopped calling my own daughter? When had I started asking David's permission to reach out to her? My fingers were shaking as I dialed. Rachel answered on the second ring. Mom, are you okay? It's so early. Just hearing her voice, the genuine concern in it, made me realize how long it had been since someone had spoken to me with real love. Rachel, I need to ask you something. Did David tell you about the barbecue on Saturday? There was a pause. What barbecue? The one with Sandra's parents. David said you couldn't make it because you had plans. Mom, I haven't heard from David in 3 months. I've been trying to call you, but David always answers and says you're sleeping or busy. I thought you didn't want to talk to me. The final piece clicked into place. They hadn't just been isolating me from my independence. They'd been isolating me from the one person who might have protected me. Rachel, I need to see you. Can you come home? I'm already in my car, Mom. I'll be there in 2 hours. After I hung up, James looked at me with something like pride. Eleanor, are you ready to take your life back? I thought about the broken plate in the grass, about Sandra's smirk, about my son's laughter as he humiliated his own mother. Then I thought about the $2 million in assets they'd been treating like their personal piggy bank. James, how quickly can we move on this? How quickly do you want to move? I smiled for the first time in months. I want them out of my house by the end of the week. Rachel arrived at James's office looking like she'd driven straight through without stopping. Her eyes were red, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and when she saw me, she burst into tears. Mom, I thought you hated me. I held my daughter for the first time in months, feeling how thin she'd gotten, how tense her shoulders were. Sweetheart, I could never hate you. I thought you were too busy for your old mother. David kept telling me you didn't want to be bothered, that you were adjusting to having them take care of you. He said you told him I was judgmental about Sandra, that I made you uncomfortable. James cleared his throat gently. Rachel, your mother never said any of those things. In fact, we think David and Sandra have been deliberately keeping you two apart. Rachel pulled back to look at me. Mom, how long has this been going on? As I started explaining everything James had discovered, I watched my daughter's face change from confusion to horror to fury. When I got to the part about the forged power of attorney, she stood up and started pacing. Mom, I'm a paralegal. I know what this is. This isn't just manipulation, this is elder abuse, financial exploitation. Sandra could go to prison for this. I don't want to send anyone to prison, honey. I just want my life back. Well, we're definitely getting that. Rachel sat back down and pulled out her phone. But first, I need to show you something. I've been documenting things for months because something felt wrong. She scrolled through her photos and handed me the phone. It was a screenshot of Sandra's Instagram account. The photo showed Sandra and David at some fancy restaurant, toasting with expensive wine. The caption read, "Living our best life while managing the family finances." Sometimes you have to make hard choices for the people you love. Managing the family finances? I felt my blood pressure rising. Rachel swiped to the next photo. Sandra in a designer dress, standing in front of what looked like a luxury hotel. The caption? European business trip with my consultant husband. Building our empire one meeting at a time. That's the trip they took with the business loan money, James said grimly. But it was the next photo that made me gasp. It was taken in my own living room, but everything was different. New furniture, new decorations, everything arranged like it was Sandra's house. She was posed in the center, arms spread wide, with the caption, "Finally got the old lady to understand she needed professional decorating help. Sometimes you have to be firm with elderly family members." The old lady. Professional decorating help. I remembered that day. Sandra had told me the furniture needed to be reupholstered, that she'd found someone to do it cheaper if we moved everything out temporarily. I'd spent 2 weeks sleeping in the guest room while she organized things. When I came back, everything was different, but Sandra convinced me I was remembering wrong, that this was how it had always been. "There's more," Rachel said quietly. She showed me a video Sandra had posted, taken secretly while I was cooking dinner. In it, I was talking to myself, trying to remember where I'd put the salt. Sandra's voice could be heard in the background, talking to someone off camera. See what I mean? She's getting so confused. We really need to start making decisions for her. I wasn't confused that day. Sandra had moved the salt to a different cabinet without telling me. But to anyone watching the video, I looked like a confused old woman who couldn't find things in her own kitchen. "She's been building a case," James said, his voice tight with anger. "Creating evidence that you're incompetent so she can justify taking control." Rachel scrolled to another post. This one from just last week. It was a photo of a brochure for the nursing home on Maple Street. The caption read, "Sometimes the hardest decisions are the most loving ones, researching the best care options for family members who can't make these choices themselves anymore." "They've been planning this for months," I whispered. "There's something else, Mom. Remember when you fell in the bathroom last winter? David told me you'd broken your hip and were in the hospital for weeks. He said you didn't want visitors because you were embarrassed." I stared at her. "Honey, I never fell. I never broke my hip. I had a minor procedure to remove a mole, and I was home the next day." Rachel's face went white. "I sent you flowers, Mom, to the hospital. David said you loved them, that they brightened your room. I never got any flowers." We sat in silence for a moment, the full scope of their deception settling over us like a heavy blanket. They hadn't just been stealing my money and manipulating my living situation. They'd been systematically destroying my relationships, isolating me from everyone who might have questioned what they were doing. "Mom," Rachel said slowly, "I need to ask you something, and please think carefully. Have there been other incidents? Other times when you felt confused or forgetful, but only when David and Sandra were around?" I closed my eyes, thinking back. The medication mix-up. Sandra was helping me organize my pills, and I ended up taking my blood pressure medication twice in one day. I felt terrible, disoriented. David said it proved I couldn't manage my own medication anymore. "What happened to the pill organizer you were using before?" Sandra said it was old and confusing, that the new system was better. But as I thought about it, I realized the new system was much more complicated, with multiple bottles and confusing instructions. The old one had been simple, color-coded, foolproof. "They've been setting you up to fail," James said. "Moving things, changing systems, creating situations where you'd appear confused or incompetent." Rachel was crying again. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have pushed harder to see you. I should have known something was wrong. How could you have known? They're very good at this." I looked at James. "How many other families have you seen go through this?" "More than you'd think. Adult children who see an aging parent as an opportunity rather than a responsibility. It's becoming increasingly common, especially when there's significant money involved." My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from David. "Mom, Sandra's making your favorite pot roast tonight. Why don't you come home and we can all have dinner together? We miss you." I showed the message to Rachel and James. Rachel snorted. "You haven't eaten pot roast in 10 years. You told me it gave you indigestion." She was right. I'd stopped eating beef years ago on my doctor's advice. But Sandra had been making pot roast regularly, telling me it was what I'd requested. And I'd been choking it down because I didn't want to seem ungrateful. "They don't even know you," Rachel said, her voice breaking. "They've been living with you for 5 years and they don't know what you like to eat." James leaned forward. "Eleanor, I think it's time we took action. Are you ready?" I thought about the broken plate in the grass. about Sandra's Instagram posts, about the months of loneliness while my own daughter thought I didn't want to see her. I thought about the $2 million they'd been treating like their personal inheritance, while I lived like a guest in my own home. What do we do first? First, we get you a formal competency evaluation to establish that you're of sound mind. Then we start the legal process to reclaim your property and your money. But Eleanor, once we start this, there's no going back. They're going to fight, and it's going to get ugly. I looked at Rachel, who reached over and squeezed my hand. I'll be with you every step of the way, Mom. We'll get through this together. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a real family again. Not the fake, manipulative relationship David and Sandra had constructed, but the genuine love between a mother and daughter who'd been kept apart by lies. James, make the calls, set up the evaluation, start the paperwork. I want them out of my house, and I want my life back. He smiled and picked up the phone. Let's do this. As he dialed, I realized something had shifted inside me. I wasn't Eleanor the victim anymore. I wasn't the confused old lady who needed to be managed. I was Eleanor Morrison, and I was about to remind everyone exactly who they'd been dealing with. Dr. Patricia Williams was exactly what I needed, a no-nonsense geriatric psychiatrist who'd been evaluating elderly competency for 30 years. She put me through 2 hours of cognitive tests, memory assessments, and psychological evaluations. When she finished, she looked at me with something like admiration. Mrs. Morrison, you're sharper than most people half your age. Your memory is excellent, your reasoning skills are intact, and your judgment is sound. Anyone suggesting you need a guardian or nursing home care is either misinformed or has ulterior motives. James had the official evaluation in his hands by Thursday afternoon. Eleanor, this gives us everything we need. Dr. Williams has also documented signs of psychological manipulation and emotional abuse in her report. We have grounds not just for eviction, but for charges if we want to pursue them. Rachel squeezed my hand. We'd been staying at a hotel near James's office all week, planning our next moves while David and Sandra thought I was visiting an old friend in the next town. It was the first lie I'd told them in years, and it felt like freedom. What happens now? I asked. Now we serve them with papers. Eviction notice, cease and desist on the financial accounts, and a restraining order if they attempt to contact you without legal representation present. My phone had been buzzing constantly for 3 days. David's messages had gone from concerned to confused to angry. The latest one read, "Mom, this is ridiculous. Come home right now. Sandra is worried sick about you." Should I respond? I asked Rachel. Absolutely not. Let them worry. Let them wonder what you know. James spread out the legal documents on his desk. Eleanor, are you sure you want to do this all at once? We could start smaller, ease into it. I thought about Sandra's Instagram posts, about the months Rachel and I had lost because of their lies, about the broken plate in the grass. James, they didn't ease into destroying my life. Why should I ease into taking it back? He smiled. All right then. Rachel, since you're a paralegal, would you like to serve the papers personally? Rachel's eyes lit up. Oh, I would love that honor. Friday morning, we drove to my house. My house, I kept reminding myself, in James's car. Rachel carried the legal documents in a manila envelope, her professional demeanor masking what I knew was years of pent-up anger at how they'd treated me. David's BMW was in the driveway next to Sandra's white Mercedes. Both cars that I'd been making payments on, I realized with a bitter laugh. Even their means of transportation was built on my money. Are you ready for this, Mom? I looked at the house where I'd raised my children, where I'd been happy with Robert, where I'd grieved his loss and slowly rebuilt my life until David and Sandra arrived to tear it down again. I've been ready for years. I just didn't know it. Rachel rang the doorbell. I could hear movement inside. Then Sandra's voice calling out cheerfully, "Coming!" The door opened, and Sandra's face went through a series of rapid changes. Surprise at seeing Rachel, confusion about why we were both there, and then something that looked almost like fear when she saw the official envelope in Rachel's hands. Eleanor, there you are. We've been so worried. Sandra's voice was higher than usual, strained. Rachel, what a surprise. David didn't mention you were coming. He didn't know, Rachel said calmly. We need to speak with both of you. Is David home? Of course, come in, come in. Sandra stepped back, but I noticed she positioned herself between us and the living room. David's just finishing up a business call. Business call, right. I wondered if it was about the consulting firm that didn't actually exist, or maybe about spending more of the loan money I'd co-signed for. David appeared from the kitchen, phone still in his hand, his face lighting up when he saw me. Mom, thank God you're back. We were about to call the police. You can't just disappear like that without telling us where you're going. Actually, I can, I said quietly. This is still my house, and I'm still an adult who can go where I please. Something shifted in David's expression. The concerned son mask slipped just slightly, revealing something colder underneath. Mom, we've talked about this. You need to let us know where you are. What if something happened to you? What if something happened to you, David? Do you always tell me where you're going? Do you ask my permission to leave the house? Sandra laughed nervously. Eleanor, don't be silly. It's different when you're our age. No, Rachel said, stepping forward. It's not different. She's a competent adult, and she doesn't need anyone's permission to live her life. David's eyes narrowed as he looked at his sister. Rachel, I don't know what Mom's been telling you, but she's been having some problems lately. Memory issues, confusion. We're just trying to help. Help, Rachel repeated. She opened the manila envelope and pulled out the documents. Like helping yourselves to her money? Like helping to forge power of attorney documents? Like helping to isolate her from her own daughter? The silence that followed was deafening. Sandra's face went pale, and David's jaw tightened. I don't know what you think you know, David said slowly, but you're way out of line here. Am I? Rachel handed him the first set of papers. David Morrison, you're being served with a formal eviction notice. You have 7 days to vacate these premises. David stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. This is insane. Mom, you can't be serious about this. Sandra Morrison, Rachel continued, handing the second set to my daughter-in-law. You're being served with a cease and desist order regarding all financial accounts belonging to Eleanor Morrison. Any further access to these accounts will be considered theft. Sandra's hands were shaking as she took the papers. Eleanor, honey, I think you're confused. We're family. We take care of each other. No, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in years. Family takes care of each other. What you've been doing is taking advantage of each other. David crumpled the papers in his fist. This is Rachel's doing. Isn't it? She's always been jealous that you chose us, that you trusted us with your care. I never chose you, David. I grieved my husband and you moved in like vultures. There's a difference. Mom, you're sick. You need help. This is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking Dr. Peterson warned us about. Dr. Peterson, my family doctor who'd been suggesting I might need additional support lately. I wondered how many conversations David and Sandra had had with him, painting me as a confused, declining old woman. Funny thing about Dr. Peterson, Rachel said. I called his office yesterday to request Mom's medical records. Turns out he's been documenting concerns about her mental state based entirely on reports from you and Sandra. He hasn't actually examined her for cognitive issues in over 2 years. David's face flushed red. You had no right to call her doctor. I had every right. I'm her daughter, and I have medical power of attorney. The real one, signed and witnessed properly, not the forged document Sandra's been using. Sandra finally found her voice. This is ridiculous. Eleanor, you know we love you. Everything we've done has been for your own good. My own good? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Was it for my own good when you told Rachel I didn't want to see her? Was it for my own good when you redecorated my house without asking me? Was it for my own good when you took $75,000 for a fake business and spent it on a European vacation? You don't understand business, Eleanor. That trip was necessary for networking, for building connections. I understand theft, Sandra. And I understand manipulation. And I understand that both of you have mistaken my grief and loneliness for stupidity. David stepped toward me, his voice taking on a threatening tone. Mom, if you go through with this, you'll be alone. Rachel lives 3 hours away. She can't take care of you like we can. I don't need anyone to take care of me. I need people to respect me, to love me without wanting something in return. And if I can't have that, then yes, I'd rather be alone. Rachel handed David one final document. And this is a restraining order. If either of you attempt to contact our mother outside of legal channels, or if you come within 100 feet of her, you'll be arrested. Sandra burst into tears. Not the real kind, the performative kind she'd perfected over the years. Eleanor, please, we're family. You can't do this to family. I looked at her, this woman who'd spent 5 years systematically dismantling my life, and felt nothing but pity. Sandra, you're right. I would never do this to family. But you stopped being family the moment you decided I was something to be used instead of someone to be loved. David threw the papers on the floor. Fine, fine. But don't come crawling back to us when you realize what a mistake you've made. Don't call us when you fall and break a hip for real. Don't call us when you can't remember where you put your keys or what day it is. I won't, I said simply. Goodbye, David. As Rachel and I walked toward the car, I could hear Sandra sobbing and David shouting behind us. But for the first time in years, their drama didn't feel like my responsibility. I was free. The first call came at 6 in the morning, 3 days after we'd served the papers. I was staying at Rachel's apartment temporarily while James worked on getting David and Sandra out of my house. The number was blocked, but I knew who it was. Hello, Eleanor. Sandra's voice was different now. Gone was the syrupy sweetness, the fake concern. This was cold, calculating. We need to talk. No, we don't. Any communication needs to go through my lawyer. Your lawyer? She laughed bitterly. Do you have any idea what you've done? David lost his biggest client yesterday because of your little stunt. His reputation is ruined. What client, Sandra? The consulting business doesn't exist. It does exist, Eleanor. Just because you're too old to understand modern business doesn't mean it's fake. I almost felt sorry for her. Even now, caught red-handed, she couldn't stop lying. Sandra, I saw the bank records. $75,000 spent on personal expenses. Hotels in Paris, restaurants in Rome, shopping in Milan. There were no business meetings. Silence. Then, you had no right to look at those records. I had every right. It's my money. Was your money. You gave it to us freely. You can't take it back just because you're having regrets. The audacity was breathtaking. I gave it to David for a legitimate business. Using it for a vacation is fraud, Sandra. Prove it. Her voice turned vicious. Go ahead. Try to prove we didn't have business meetings in Europe. Try to prove that every dinner, every hotel room, every expense wasn't related to building David's consulting practice. She was right. Of course, it would be nearly impossible to prove they hadn't conducted any business while they were traveling, but she'd forgotten something important. I don't have to prove anything, Sandra. I just have to stop giving you money. The line went quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then I heard what sounded like crying. But with Sandra, I could never be sure what was real. Eleanor, please. You don't understand. We're drowning here. The mortgage on this house, the car payments, David's credit cards, we can't afford any of it without your help. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you decided to treat me like an ATM. We never treated you like an ATM. We love you. We took care of you. You isolated me from my daughter. You convinced my doctor I was losing my mind. You redecorated my house without asking and then gaslit me into thinking I was remembering wrong. That's not love, Sandra. That's abuse. You're twisting everything. We were protecting you, helping you make good decisions. Whose decision was it to spend my money on a European vacation? No answer. Whose decision was it to forge power of attorney documents? Still nothing. Whose decision was it to tell Rachel I didn't want to see her? She was judging us, Eleanor. She was trying to turn you against us. She was trying to protect me, something I apparently needed more than I realized. The call ended abruptly. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time it was David. Mom, we need to talk face to face. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. The restraining order says you can't contact me directly, David. The restraining order is ridiculous. And you know it. I'm your son. Sons don't need restraining orders to talk to their mothers. His voice had that edge to it that I remembered from his teenage years, when he didn't get his way and thought he could intimidate me into changing my mind. It had worked then. It wouldn't work now. Sons who love their mothers don't steal from them either. But here we are. I never stole from you. Every penny you gave us was freely given, under false pretenses. You told me you needed help, that you were struggling. You didn't tell me you were spending my money on luxury vacations while posting about it on social media. Those posts. Sandra wasn't thinking clearly when she wrote those. She was just excited about the trip. David, stop. Just stop. I've seen everything. The bank records, the forged documents, the evidence of manipulation. I know who you really are now. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was different, desperate. Mom, if you go through with this eviction, we'll lose everything. The house, the cars, everything. Is that really what you want? To see your own son homeless? You won't be homeless, David. You'll just have to live within your means like everyone else. What means? You've destroyed my business reputation. No one will hire me now. Your business never existed. You can't destroy something that was never real. It was real. We were building something, creating connections, establishing ourselves in the consulting field. Even now, he believed his own lies. Or maybe he just needed me to believe them. David, I'm 72 years old. I don't have time for this anymore. I don't have time to pretend your excuses make sense, or that your behavior is acceptable, or that I deserve to be treated like a burden instead of a person. You're not a burden, Mom. We never said you were a burden. You made me eat outside like an animal. Silence. You told people I was losing my mind when I was perfectly fine. More silence. You kept me away from Rachel for months with lies. Mom, you spent $300,000 of my money over 5 years and convinced me it was normal. We can pay it back. With what money, David? You don't have a job. You don't have a business. You don't have any income except what you've been taking from me. The desperation in his voice was getting stronger. We'll figure it out. We'll get real jobs, make real money. Just give us another chance. I gave you 5 years of chances. I gave you the benefit of the doubt every time something felt wrong. I gave you my trust, my money, and my home. What did you give me in return? We gave you love. We gave you care. We made sure you weren't alone. No, David. You made sure I was alone. You isolated me from everyone who actually loved me so you could control me more easily. That's not true. Then why couldn't I see Rachel? Why couldn't I make my own decisions about my house, my money, my life? Why did every choice have to go through you and Sandra first? He couldn't answer that. He couldn't answer it because there was no good answer. 2 days later, James called with news. Eleanor, they're fighting the eviction. They've hired a lawyer and they're claiming adverse possession of the house. What does that mean? It means they're arguing that since they've been living there and maintaining the property for 5 years, they have legal rights to it regardless of whose name is on the deed. Can they do that? They can try, but adverse possession requires the occupation to be without the owner's permission. Since you invited them to stay initially and you've been living there with them, it's a very weak argument. But it will drag things out. How long? Could be weeks, could be months. They're also claiming that the business loan documents are legitimate, that you understood what you were signing. I felt tired suddenly. Bone deep tired. James, I can't do this for months. I can't fight them forever. Eleanor, you don't have to fight them forever. You just have to fight them long enough to win. And we are going to win. That evening, Rachel and I were having dinner when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of my house with a for sale sign in the front yard. The message read, "If we can't have it, nobody can." I showed Rachel, who immediately called James. While she was on the phone with him, explaining about the sign, I realized something. They thought they were threatening me, showing me they could hurt me one last time. But they'd actually shown me something else entirely. They were panicking. They were desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. "Mom," Rachel said, hanging up the phone, "James says they can't sell the house. They don't own it, and any attempt to put it on the market would be fraud." "I know, honey, but they don't know that I know that." "What do you mean?" I smiled for the first time all week. "I mean, we're going to let them think they're winning, and then we're going to watch them hang themselves with their own rope." 3 weeks later, I stood in my own kitchen for the first time in months. The house was exactly as I remembered it, but everything felt different, smaller somehow, less important. They'd fought the eviction for 2 weeks before their lawyer dropped them for non-payment. Apparently, when you can't access someone else's money anymore, legal fees become a problem. Rachel was helping me go through the house, documenting everything that had been changed or taken. Sandra had removed most of her personal touches before leaving, but evidence of their occupation remained everywhere. Bills I'd never seen, credit card statements in my name that I'd never authorized, a second mortgage application that thankfully had been denied. "Mom, look at this." Rachel held up a folder she'd found in David's old office. "It's a business plan for the consulting company. They actually wrote it all down." I read through the pages, amazed at the elaborate fiction they'd created. Market analysis, client projections, revenue forecasts, all completely fabricated. But what struck me most was a section titled Family Investment Strategy. "Listen to this," I told Rachel. Phase 1, establish trust and dependency. Phase 2, gradual financial integration. Phase 3, complete asset consolidation. They planned this from the beginning. Apparently so. I closed the folder. But you know what, honey? I'm not even angry anymore. How can you not be angry? They stole from you, lied to you, manipulated you for years. I walked to the window and looked out at the backyard where this all started. The grass had grown over the spot where my plate had broken. Because being angry would mean letting them control my emotions even now. And I'm done being controlled by anyone. James had called that morning with the final numbers. Between the business loan, the forged financial access, and the undocumented gifts over the years, David and Sandra had taken over $400,000 from me. But here's what they never understood. I could afford it. My investments had grown, my pension was solid, and even without that money, I was still financially secure. The irony is, I told Rachel, if they'd just been honest, if they'd treated me with respect and asked for help when they needed it, I probably would have given them the money anyway. "You're too generous, Mom." Maybe, but I'd rather be too generous than too cruel. My phone rang. It was James. "Eleanor, I have news. David's consulting business wasn't completely fake after all." "What do you mean?" "It was a shell company he created to hide assets from creditors. He owes over $100,000 in credit card debt, plus back taxes. plus student loans that he never finished paying. The consulting business was his way of trying to look legitimate while he figured out how to pay everything off with your money. So, he was in financial trouble before they moved in with me. Deep trouble. Sandra knew about it too. That's why they targeted you so systematically. They needed someone with money and assets to solve their problems. After I hung up, I sat in my living room, my actual living room, with my furniture arranged the way I liked it, and thought about the past 5 years. Yes, they'd manipulated me. Yes, they'd stolen from me. But they'd also given me something unintentional. They'd shown me how strong I really was. I'd survived my husband's death. I'd rebuilt my finances. I'd raised 2 children, one of whom turned out to be everything I could have hoped for. And when pushed to my breaking point, I'd found the courage to fight back and win. Mom? Rachel came into the room. I found something else. She handed me a letter, my name written on the envelope in David's handwriting. Inside was a single page. Mom, by the time you read this, we'll be gone. I want you to know that everything we did because we love you. Maybe you can't see that now, but someday you'll understand that we were trying to protect you from yourself. You're getting older, and older people make bad decisions with money. We were safeguarding your future. Sandra and I have found a place in Arizona where we can start over. Don't try to contact us. We need time to heal from what you've done to this family. David. I read it twice, then handed it back to Rachel. He still doesn't get it. Are you going to respond? No. There's nothing left to say. 6 months later, I was sitting in my garden when Rachel called with an update. Mom, you're not going to believe this. Sandra filed for divorce from David last month. I'm not surprised. When the money ran out, so did her interest in the marriage. There's more. David's been trying to contact his old college friends for loans. Apparently, he's been telling people that his crazy mother stole his inheritance and left him homeless. I laughed. Well, the homeless part is probably true. Is he actually homeless? He's living in a studio apartment in Phoenix, working at a call center. Sandra moved in with some new boyfriend who owns a car dealership. Good for her, I suppose. Mom, doesn't any of this bother you? Don't you want to see them suffer for what they did? I thought about that as I watered my tomato plants. Did I want them to suffer? The truth was more complicated than that. I want them to learn, honey. I want them to understand that actions have consequences. But I don't want them to suffer just for the sake of suffering. You're a better person than I am. No, I'm just tired of carrying their negativity around. I spent 5 years letting them make me feel small and confused and powerless. I'm not going to spend the next 5 years letting them make me feel bitter and vengeful. That evening, I had dinner with 3 friends from my old job at the hospital. Real friends, people who'd known me for decades and valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. We laughed about old times, made plans for a weekend trip to the mountains, talked about books we'd read and movies we wanted to see. Walking to my car afterward, I realized something profound. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not someone's burden, not someone's target, not someone's problem to be managed. Just Eleanor Morrison, a woman who'd lived through loss and betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. My house was quiet when I got home, but it was a peaceful quiet, not the tense silence of people walking on eggshells. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my favorite chair with a book I'd been wanting to read for months. My phone was on the table beside me, silent. No desperate calls from David, no manipulative texts from Sandra, no emergencies that required my immediate financial intervention, just peace. And for the first time in 5 years, that was exactly what I wanted.